There is no good reason to pass this legislation other than somebody thinks that somebody's getting an advantage over someone else, and so they want to even it out.
This doesn't even make any sense at all. The parties themselves should have to pay, not the people. The people shouldn't have to pay for this. This is the people's money.
And that was just some of the back and forth from floor debates in the Kansas legislature this year on a slew of election laws. It's still a hot topic for lawmakers, especially with a heated election season right around the corner. Welcome in. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics. I'm your host, Rebecca Chung. Today, we're sitting down with the state's top election officer to get his take. Kansas Secretary of State Scott Schwab is opening up about the most controversial topics this year and what to expect in 2024. So Secretary Schwab, a lot of election bills were introduced this year, some erring more on the controversial side.
Yeah.
We had one that banned ballot drop boxes. Another would have gotten rid of the 3-day grace period for advanced ballots. What are your thoughts on how everything's come to an end?
Well, hopefully, we want a heated primary on drop boxes. And this is the second year in a row that substantial banning or changes to the way we use drop boxes is failed to make it in the statute, or I think it's even failed to make it to the governor's desk. And we've been big advocates because if in a lot of Kansas small towns, the post office is across the street from the clerk's office. Why give it to the federal government and put it in the post office where most of the time it leaves the state, when you can just to show up across the street, put it in the drop box, and it has Kansas security provisions on there. For example, they'll do cameras, and it's handled according to Kansas ballot custody as opposed to federal post office custody. And so I think that kind of ended the argument, and it was part of the national conversation that came into Kansas. And hopefully we've won that argument, but we'll find out more next year. But we're relieved. That way there's not massive drastic changes to election law.
Okay. Well, I know one of the new laws going into effect is Senate Bill 221. That's the one you wanted to talk about. It makes a long list of election changes. One of those include limiting write-in candidates. So the new law requires write-in candidates to file an affidavit before the election to confirm interest in seeking nomination and election to that office. If they don't, these votes would not be counted.
Yeah.
What was the thought, do you think, behind putting something like that in place?
A lot of people call it the Mickey Mouse provision because people don't like any candidates, so they write Mickey Mouse. I like to go back to 2020. There was, it was 2021 in the Wichita mayor's race. I think there was over 60 people who wrote as a write-in candidate. Epstein didn't kill himself. It's a phrase, it's not an actual person, but they have to count that. Mm-hmm. And so Epstein didn't kill himself would now have to file an affidavit saying, yes, I am actually running a write-in campaign. So these more, silly write-ins, the clerks don't have to waste their time counting them and reporting. However, if, Thomas Moore wants to run for office as a write-in campaign because nobody actually filed for the office, all he has to do is sign an affidavit with his local county clerk's office saying, no, I really do intend to run. And then those will be counted. It saves so much time, hassle, and money on our local communities.
Yeah. I mean, I know we all enjoy kind of seeing what names were the writing candidates, but I'm sure it does save time, right?
It does. And it's good for a 30-second laugh. But, when it comes to clerks, especially sometimes they have a staff of 2, in some of our rural communities. It's a lot of work. And so and plus they're also having to wrap up the election. They got provisionals, they got advanced mail ballots they're still counting, plus they got tax statements going out. Anything we can do to take some of the pressure off them, we definitely want to try and do.
Okay. Now, what are some of the key changes you think that this new law would make?
So a lot of this is the way we interpreted it, but the statute was never really clear. So, for example, if you're going to do a school bond election, you have 30 days to do it. But military, you have to send the ballot out 45 days before it goes. Well, you can't send it 45 days if the election's only 30. The timelines didn't match up in statute. During the recounts we had during Value them both in the state treasurer's race and some legislative races back in 2022, they had to tell our office which counties to recount before the Board of Canvassers met. And Senator Karen Tyson got crosswise with it, which I understandably so, because some counties flipped after the Board of Canvassers met. But by then it was too late to ask for a recount, which is unfair to the candidate and any group that's interested in a recount. So what we were able to do is straighten those timelines out, so after the canvassers you can count it. And then some of the law goes back to even the 1800s. Back during the 1860s, Missouri was kidnapping Kansas poll workers so that we couldn't have an election. They wanted us to be a slave state. So they would just kidnap our election workers. So if they showed up to a poll, it was in statute they could elect their own poll workers. That's no longer functional in today's world. And although if you go to Fort Leavenworth, you still see cannons pointed at Fort Leavenworth, we are not actually at war with them anymore, and we're not so concerned about them getting kidnapped. And poll workers have to go through rigorous training. Just to elect your own wouldn't be functional. So we just got rid of that from statute. Some other things, back in the 1900s, they said we had to purge the voter rolls. Well, data list maintenance is an ongoing thing. There's not really a purging going on. It's just data list maintenance that any organization would do. So we kind of got rid of some of those terms, because sometimes you get an activist saying, well, how come you do this, or why aren't you doing this? Times have changed, and we just need to update the statute to reflect that.
We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Protect your home from sudden power outages with a Generac home standby generator, installed by Shockwave Electric's certified experts. Call Shockwave Electric for all your commercial and residential electrical services.
Local business is essential to the success of our community, and Manhattan's best are open for business, supporting our neighbors, our community, and investing in the future. Shop local and remember Manhattan's best, like Kites, Bellis Academy, and Midwest Dream Car Collection.
I'm here in the Amazon jungle, and it's because of you. Every time you buy from Success Vision, you're not only getting a great pair of glasses, you're doing something great. You're enabling Success Vision employees to help people in remote villages to see clearly for the first time. So thank you for being our customer. My name is Janae, and I'm a Success Vision employee.
Too bad for 39 in an hour for less. Come see us today, Success Vision Express.
You want sports, we've got sports.
KU and K-State sports on K-Nation.
Highlights, scores, interviews, you name it, we have it.
So whether you root for the Jayhawks or the Wildcats,
you'll love the coverage we put together for you every single week. We hope you'll join us every Sunday night right after 27 News at 10.
as we bring you another exciting week of K-Nation.
Sponsored by 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline.
Anyone can choose to make a difference. You can help people succeed, rebuild after disasters, protect the environment, or feed the hungry. Not only will you make a difference for others, but for yourself. You can earn money for college, learn career skills, and make friendships that last a lifetime. Make a difference. Choose your future. Choose AmeriCorps.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebecca Chung, continuing our conversation with Secretary of State Scott Schwab about what to expect in 2024. That includes a new election law, making a long list of changes. Now, I do know that there are some changes that pertain to county election officers. So there are certain things they wouldn't be able to do under this bill, correct?
Yeah, so what it would do, we had a situation in Atchison where they did a bond issue. Well, the bond issue was coming up, the filing deadline ends just before an election. Well, the filing deadline the voter registration deadline hasn't happened yet for the primary. But because there was this overlap, students showing up at Benedictine to go vote couldn't register to vote because the bond issue interceded. We ended up finding a federal statute that superseded, and so we were able to fix that. But basically what this says is you can't have that bond election when it's going to interfere with a normal traditional election, whether it's a primary, general election, whether it's a local election or state and federal elections. And that way we don't run into that situation where the state gets sued or we get in trouble with the Department of Justice, and they sue us for not registering voters within their right to be registered according to statute.
Well, I know that one of the other changes also has to do with election equipment, like ballot boxes. What will those changes look like come 2024?
So it basically is saying what we can regulate, what we can't regulate, and some of the things like we wanted to regulate drop boxes, but again, that got lost in the drop box debate, which is fine. We'll still issue guidelines. There's just non-binding. But we're constantly wanting to make sure that there is a list as it relates to the equipment that's certified. And a lot of folks say, well, did you certify that piece of equipment? Well, we don't certify that piece of equipment. We certify that manufacturer, and we certify that model number. And it goes on a list, and the counties can purchase off that list. And we want to make sure that's in statute so they know for sure that it's basically, here's the shopping list you can order off of. If it's not on this list, they got to go through the approval process. Because there was confusion over years that say, well, you got to certify the equipment. Where's your certificate for this machine in this county office? And it didn't work that way.
Why do you think we're seeing some of these changes proposed now?
Well, they've been proposed for years. As a matter of fact, Brad Bryant, I ran into him at the Clerks Association. He was the election director for both Graves, and he worked for Bill Graves, and he was for Ron Thornburg years ago, and he was carried over into the Kobach administration before he switched jobs. He said, we've been trying for 20 years to get that done. Some of it for 30 years. How did you get it done? We just saw this window of opportunity where having served in the legislature, still having those relationships, I could ask for favors and say, hey, we've got some statutory cleanup. I think the minority party, the Democrats in Kansas, were concerned so much of radical far-right policy happening, they weren't going to try to amend anything. They were just happy if nothing changed. And then there was a lot of pragmatic members on the Republican side that says, we want to go home and say we did something. I said, well, here's something you can do. We've been trying to do this for 30 years, and you can go home and say, you were the one person to change something that took 30 years. So all these forces came together, and then we were able to go to the Republican caucus that may have wanted something more, perhaps controversial, and say, our goal is to get the governor to sign it. And the more controversial it is, the less chance you're going to be able to get the governor to sign it, because a lot of these folks are going to override another veto if your amendments or your idea is too far out there.
And another big change is coming for Kansas in 2024. It's the presidential preference primary, costing taxpayers millions. We'll tell you what the state's top election officer has to say coming up. We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Mental health is about emotional health and brain health.
Healthy children and families. And a healthy Kansas.
Go to acmhck.org to find your local community mental health center.
You think knowledge is a powerful weapon? Here, you'll have plenty of ammo. We turn intelligence into tactical success. Explore more than 200 careers at GoArmy.com.
At Heartland Floors, we want to be your resource when choosing carpeting, vinyl, luxury vinyl, laminate, and pre-finished hardwoods. We'll work with your preferences and your budget to provide professional installation so you won't hesitate in recommending us to your neighbors, friends, and family.
With so many companies and so many choices for replacement windows, how do you choose?
Well, when I decided to do windows, I kind of did some research, and I've landed with Renewal by Andersen because of their reputation.
Renewal by Andersen replacement windows are an investment in your home and an investment in the quality of life inside your home.
So longevity and resale are both very important. You know, we are the long-term solution. You're not going to have the issues that you will have later down the road with other windows. It's really investing in your future.
I wanted to have something that I knew this would be an asset for the home and not something that I would regret, whether it's a year from now or 20 years from now.
For a limited time only, choose financing as low as 2.99% or choose 60 months with payments and $200 off each window.
Your home is likely your most valuable investment. Increase the value of your investment with Renewal by Andersen replacement windows.
Summer means noise, lawnmowers, firecrackers, but New Sound's got you covered. This month, all custom hearing protection is on sale, and we're waiving the office and impression fees. Hunters, musicians, infants, protection for everyone.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebecca Chung. It's a primary that the state hasn't had in decades. Now the presidential preference primary is back for 2024. And I spoke with the state's Secretary of State about the impact it could have on the election and on your wallet. Now, another big change coming up next year is the presidential preference primary. That's coming up next year in March. First, I want to just, address this? I know there's been a lot of claims about, Kansas elections not being secure. Despite that, there was still a push to throw another election in the mix. So I want to know, how do you feel about that now happening, the tables turning, and them saying, hey, we want you to run another election?
So I'm so glad you said that, because we find a lot of comfort knowing that both leaders of the Republican and then the Democrat Party, both of them were my opponents. One was a primary opponent, the other one was my Democrat opponent, and both criticized our office and local county officials on how we do elections. Then they both asked the state to say, hey, we don't want to run a presidential primary. We trust the Secretary of State's office, to which they highly criticized to do an election to which they claim wasn't secure, and now apparently they admit it's more secure than theirs. Forgive me if I run out of breath there, but that's a catharsis I've been wanting to say for a while. That is the biggest part, is it does give confidence to all those local election officials. Say they know at the end of the day you do it better than they do. You are the professional. And that was my frustration with this last election cycle, is they criticized my name and attacked me, but really they were attacking our county election officials. And these are people's neighbors. These are people who their kids go to school with. And we had a clerk that people would park outside her parents' house at night just to intimidate. And just horrible things like that. And this is just redeeming and say, but really, when they know they can't do something, they're calling on us to do it. It's going to be a lot of work for clerks, because they're wrapping up local elections in November, and then it's going to be a quick turnaround. And it's non-binding. The Democrat Party and the Republican Party can choose in the rules that, we don't want to go with who they voted for, because the party, they choose their rules on how their delegates are appointed. And we can end up having, after Super Tuesday, all the candidates that have paid to be on Kansas may not be in the race anymore come March. But regardless, the legislature and the governor wanted to spend $4.7 million on another election because they know we can do it. So there's solace in that.
Well, how will something like this be run? What will it look like for voters who want to participate? And then, as you mentioned, maybe even the amount of manpower that goes into running a primary like this.
Well, it's going to be expensive. That's why it's $4.7 million. And I do appreciate the legislature and legislative leadership making sure that money was appropriated to reimburse the counties, because they're already in their fiscal year, and they've already set what that clerk's office and elections are going to cost, and all of a sudden they just throw in another election. This will absolutely help them to offset it. But they're looking at this they're going to treat it more like a primary, where there will be sometimes they need less resources, maybe in certain communities not as many polling places, simply because they just not the volume of voters. I'm assuming both the Democrat and Republican Party will choose to participate. If they don't, then we won't have it. But I'm confident the Republican Party will participate. I'm pretty confident the Democrat Party will participate, and it'll look like a primary. You'll just see But the difference between a primary and this is, when we do primaries in Kansas, whoever wins a primary, their name is on the ballot in the general. This one, their name may not be on the ballot come November.
And as you mentioned, there was that concern of the cost to taxpayers as well. That's still a cost to taxpayers, even if it's coming back to the state. Yeah. So, is it worth the cost, do you think?
I still think, because whoever wins this presidential primary may not even be on the ballot in November, I don't think it's a good use of resources when, we got highway capacity issues on K-10. We have K-12 always asking for more money. We have issues with higher ed. We're still trying to increase workforce development. Now we're going to have an election that may not even matter come November. Personally, I think there's better resources, but I wasn't, the legislature saw something perhaps we didn't see.
Now, this will be a primary where only people that register as Democrats and Republicans can participate. One of the arguments from supporters is that this bill would increase voter participation. So why not also open it up to unaffiliated voters or people registered as independent if the main argument was voter participation?
Yeah, and it could be. So the Democrat Party and the Republican Party still have to write their rules on how they're going to assign delegates and whether they're going to participate in this presidential preference primary or not. And in that, they can determine whether or not people that are affiliated or unaffiliated can participate in their primary. So it's up to the rules of the party. So if you're unaffiliated and you want to, if you think your party should, I'd reach out to your party officials to encourage them. Or if you don't, then just let them know your opinion there as well. Again, that's the legislature's prerogative. We wrote the bill in a way, our hand in the bill was to make sure we could do it in a way that we wouldn't fail on the clerk end, being able to do it, making sure the timelines were out enough, that we weren't violating UACAVA with soldiers and, in compliance with the Help America Vote Act. We want to make sure they didn't get us sued by the federal government. Once that was done, the rest of the policy ideas came from them, and we didn't have a hand in that. And so I would think, you increase the number of participants. We saw that with the election last summer with the Value Them Both amendment. When unaffiliated could vote on that, there was an increased turnout. So I would think there'd be an increased turnout.
We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Go ahead, dream big. Save on new flooring now with 3-room deals for your entire home. Only at Carpet One. Carpet, any 3 rooms from $39 a month for 36 months. Luxury vinyl, any 3 rooms as low as $69 a month. Hardwood, get 3 rooms full from $99 a month. All with 36 months to pay, interest-free, and no money down. Dream big, save big. Get 3-room deals now only at Carpet One. The easy choice for all floors.
Find out about home services, unique local businesses, and events around Northeast Kansas. Watch No Place Like Home, Thursdays at 9 on Fox 43 AM Live. Sponsored by Azura Credit Union.
Shop, dine, relax. We have it all. Fairlawn Plaza, all together better.
It's Memorial Day madness at the Mattress Hub, and now's the time to save big.
All the best brands in sleep up to $1,000 off with hot buys from $299. Or instant savings with Tempur-Pedic or Purple mattress and no interest financing for up to 60 months. Only at the Mattress Hub.
Car accident? Devon James wins.
The real beauty of Kansas lies in the strength of its people. Hardworking, determined, resilient.
But sometimes, even the best of us can use a little help.
As attorneys, we have the privilege of being your advocate when you need help the most.
Because what matters to you matters to us. And that's why if you've been injured, Devon James wins.
Anywhere in the state, dial 8. Call 888-8888.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebecca Chung. The pressure is on for next year's election, and the Secretary of State is answering some of our biggest questions about the new presidential primary and how many people could be heading to the polls. Now, could this new presidential preference primary bring more attention to Kansas? That was another argument from supporters of the bill. Are we expecting more candidates to come here, or is that just the hope?
That's the hope. Okay. It's a hope. We have no evidence to prove. The only reason why they're going to come to Kansas is if it's contested and everybody's scratching and clawing for every possible delegate. If coming out of Super Tuesday, the die's been cast, then probably not. But if coming out of Super Tuesday, it's very close and it's very heated, whether it's Clinton versus Barack Obama was close, and we've had some on the Republican side years ago, then yeah, I would see they'll either come in or send their surrogates to come in and speak and campaign across the state. But I think it all hinges on how big Super Tuesday is and who comes out and who almost comes out.
Okay, now 2022 was a big year for voter turnout in Kansas, but will the momentum continue into 2024? What can we expect for next year?
So it's really early to tell because, we don't know what the voter registration is going to be. And that's why sometimes our numbers are off. But we've been consistently saying what drives voter turnout is compelling issues and compelling candidates. And sometimes controversial issues and controversial candidates. That's what drives people to go vote. And, you had compelling and controversial with the Value Them Both amendment in 2022. What will happen just depends on who are the candidates for the president running for president in 2024. If Biden decides not to run and pivots and somebody else rises to the top in the Democrat nomination process, or whether it's Trump or DeSantis or anybody else who's about to, that's what's going to drive the turnout. And again, a lot of it comes back to Super Tuesday when we really have a clear idea of who those candidates are and how compelling they are. And that's what will push the turnout. And then also if there's an influx of population, sometimes that increases it as much. You know, we have the new Panasonic plant that's coming. Does that increase labor, therefore increase the number of registered voters? Those are all factors that we'll look at more closer to next summer.
What are your other hopes for 2024? How do you hope
Safe.
it changes from, past elections we've had?
Yeah, the biggest thing is I hope the whole, between the Fox News Dominion settlement, the recounts we've had in the state, I value them both, and also in the treasurer's race and legislative races. Hopefully they realize that our local election officials get it right. Our elections are secure. If there's one thing, and it really hurts the Republicans the most, if Democrats are out talking voter suppression, their base doesn't turn out. If Republicans are talking voter fraud, their base doesn't turn out. So their language, the Republican language, is what is basically disappointing the Republican turnout. My hope is that finally goes away and realize, so you're attacking your neighbors. You're not attacking me. You're not attacking an equipment manufacturer. You're not attacking, these people that you think are puppeteers to our elections. You're attacking our clerks. And these people that, whether they're high school students or senior citizens, this is their civic role they like to do, you're attacking them. And they love America. They love our process. And so I always go back to hopefully some of these folks who really have doubts about the integrity of our elections would just be a poll worker. Go do the deal. Because, they say if you don't vote, you don't have a right to complain. You don't have a right to criticize unless you're willing to try to do what they do. And every time we've had one of these folks that deny the quality of elections in Kansas, be a poll worker, they end up singing our praises. And when I see our election system, they just say, wow, Kansas is really, really secure.
Secretary Schwab, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And that was your look inside Kansas politics. If you want to keep up to date on all things Kansas politics, then follow us on social media. Follow us on Twitter at InKansasPolitics and on Facebook. Just search Inside Kansas Politics. We'll also post the full video on YouTube. Just search KSNT News and check ksnt.com/inside-kansas-politics for past episodes. If you have a story you want Kansas state legislators to hear, let us know. We'll see you here same time, same place next week.